When I translated the poem Magic into sign language, I wanted to emphasize the imagery of stars being emitted from a character. With that imagery in mind, I started translating lines of the poem, but I came across some phrases that I felt wouldn't translate well for signing audiences. These particular lines are based on sound, not images, which is not readily accessible for some people. So I decided to replace that auditory information with other sensory metaphors. For example, take the phrase, sounds of their glow. I chose to show the feeling in a person's heart in conjunction with the star's visible sparkle. And that choice conveys a visual experience of sounds of their glow. I grappled with another translation challenge presenting auditory information shown in sign language. In the world of the poem, the phrase voices of beams refers to the movement of the internal stars moving from the chest up to the throat, which becomes manifested in song as voices of beams. In order to make sense for signing audiences, I chose to move the stars not to the throat, but to the hands instead. And then the hands could emanate light, creating an equivalent experience to voices of beams. The process of translating this poem was interesting. I tried to visualize the poem as a movie in my head, and I would thoroughly vet each line to see exactly how it would fit into the story. For example, the first stanza clearly establishes the main character as someone with stars inside their chest. That leads to the second stanza, where the grateful, urging holy stars encourage the character to make the leap towards light. I chose to embody that line by setting up the star above the character, and then I personified the star speaking to the character. The signs I used here were like gesturing to someone, come on, step up here. And then I role shifted back to the main character, who would then jump onto a star. Then the character opens themselves up to the experience, and that's when their inner light is conveyed through the hands. That leads to the next stanza, where the voices of beams reach out to other people's hearts, touched as they are by watching the main character signing. In the next stanza, the character increases their creative output by literally throwing out stars from inside the chest. With more stars being expelled, the next stanza has the character completely surrounded by stars born of their own imagination. That experience of euphoria is what closes the poem, where the character jumps on stars and then over the moon. It was important in the translation process for me to review each stanza and ask myself how to create a cohesive story with a logical chain of causation from one event to the next. Had I just translated the words of the poem directly into sign language, it would not have the same impact. So it's important for me to ask myself, what would this poem look like if it was a movie that someone was signing? As if the author himself conceived of and generated an original film, rather than me creating a word-for-word translation. If the author was fluent in sign language, what would that poem look like? That's what I tried to convey in my translation, an equivalent experience in American Sign Language. I hope this discussion is helpful to you and that you now have a deeper appreciation of my translation process.